Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to another Dracula entry, the final one before going into a bit of a break here, so I'm a bit Dracula'd out. But luckily, this one was quite a departure, which is for the film Blacula from 1972. Now, I'd seen this VHS cover at rental shops when I was a kid, and I never got around to it. Like films such as Tales from the Hood, which I hadn't seen until 6 or 7 years ago, I thought that with a title like that, it would just be a silly parody of sorts, filled with stereotype jokes throughout. I did finally dip into Tales from the Hood, finally because of the documentary Horror Noir, A History of Black Horror. Sadly, it's no longer on Shudder, but it is on paid rental. If interested, it's definitely worth checking out. It gave more detail on Tales from the Hood, which got me interested, and I really enjoyed it. And it gave similar info about Blacula and the sequel Scream, Blacula Scream, which had me wanting to check those out as well. So I figured since I was going through all these Dracula-related titles that I hadn't seen before, I may as well work this one in, for which the synopsis is as follows. Los Angeles decorators buy the coffin of an African prince bitten by Dracula centuries before. So not a lot to go on there, but yeah, it's not just a black Dracula. Instead, it's a prince who was bitten, so no comparison to other films or the book, which was pretty nice as I'd been, seeing this same story kind of told so many different ways. Really, the only similarity in this film to the book was a woman who looks like his previous wife, but in modern day, like a reincarnation that we've seen in some of those films as well. But so our prince, Mamuwalde, is visiting Dracula to ask for assistance kind of suppressing the slave trade. But things don't go well. This Dracula is, weird to say, surprisingly bad. An evil creature in ways that I hadn't really seen in film before. Not only is he still wanting this slave trade to continue, but he insults Mamuwalde. A scuffle ensues, and he turns him by just biting him and then locking him in a coffin to be tormented by bloodlust for eternity, while his wife Luva is locked in that room with him to starve to death and die outside of his locked coffin. Dracula curses him, names him Blacula, locks him away. Really an evil piece of trash, the way that Dracula's kind of portrayed in this one. So that's how he becomes a vampire, our start. But then about 200 years or so later is where these decorators, mentioned in the synopsis, come in as they're buying all sorts of stuff from this castle and shipping it all to LA, which is how Blacula gets to LA and is eventually awakened. And from here on out, it continues to be really its own film, its own story, in that Blacula meets a woman who was friends with one of the victims, one of these designers, and is really bent on being with her. But the other major component here, besides his pursuit of her, is this investigation by a pathologist for the LAPD on one of the other friends of one of the victims, as he notes that the corpse seemed empty of blood even though it wasn't embalmed. So he's investigating his death, where the cargo came from, another death Blacula causes, and so on. So we have this group of friends. One Blacula is romantically pursuing, while another is investigating and getting closer to figuring out what is happening and who is responsible. Blacula, or as they know him, Mamuwalde. So yeah, this is a major shift from what I had expected seeing this VHS cover when I was a kid. That this is a separate story that takes place in the Dracula world. It's even noted in this film that Dracula was killed in the late 1800s by Van Helsing, so it's played that the Dracula story had taken place in the time after Mamuwalde was turned and boxed up, but before he was woken up. So, it works surprisingly well for me. This film, as a whole, even with the, dated stuff, like calling these designers the F-slur for gay people so nonchalantly, dropping an N-bomb here and there kind of randomly. The fashion and hairstyles especially really stuck out, these big bulbous afros and such. And the 70s soundtrack, which represents the time so well it almost felt like a 70s parody. But even with all that, it was a fun watch that really got me interested. And continuing on then a few days later with Scream, Blacula Scream from 1 year later, 1973, which has the following synopsis. Deep South voodoo stirs the bones of Blacula the vampire. This one, well, this one's a very short kind of response. It was worth checking out, but felt a little off, as if they had this voodoo story and found a way to kind of work things into a Blacula film. The shining star of this production, of course, was Pam Grier, though. which, I have to stop myself from falling into like this Greer rabbit hole of her 70s work, because I have enough stuff to watch already. But while this film didn't feel as solid as the original, there's still, a bit to like within it, especially the voodoo aspect, mixing things up a bit. Others getting turned into vampires, so we have more vampire action happening and so on. It definitely has legs, but I would say the original is the one that's more worth the time. Not that Blacula Scream was bad, just it was okay. But as for Blacula in general, for both of these, but especially for the first film, I had seen this title and assumed it was a parody, like I said, where in fact it's its own standalone story about an event which happened in the time of Dracula, before he was taken out in the book or in these other films, and the aftermath of this Blacula Mamuwalde having been turned, boxed away, rising, seeking to reunite with his lover, reincarnated in a surprisingly original story, which is more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out this latest quick video here for Blacula from 1972, and that quick word about Blacula Scream from 1 year later. At the time of this video, both of them are available on Tubi. There are some dated hairstyles and lingo, not to mention some musical numbers, both performed throughout and played as part of the soundtrack, which take a little bit to kind of get past that, but if you do, you may enjoy it. Anyways, that's all I've got for this one. It's a lot of Dracula over the past few weeks, and I'm definitely ready to mix things up. Still having more Hammer and AIP stuff, like this one was an AIP film, I believe, but time for some more 80s horror to throw in as well. Maybe even an obscure 80s sci-fi here and there, which can be tricky, as a lot of times revisiting the 80s sci-fi that's not as popular, it just really hasn't aged as well as 80s horror has. But if you enjoyed, please give me a thumbs up, and if not already a subscriber, consider subscribing so you can see those new videos as they come out. And sound off in the comments if you are a fan of this film, what are your thoughts on it? And I will see you in the next one.